Welcome to the Aro Benaiah Show. Today I'm joined by Steve Thompson, a business and growth coach, entrepreneur, and former physical therapy clinic owner who built skill and sold his business. Now he helps leaders and team unlock clarity, confidence, and sustainable growth. Oh, Steve, it's a pleasure having you on this show.
Oh, thanks for having me on here. I'm looking forward to our
Yeah,
conversations.
thank you. So, Steve, what was it like growing up?
Um, I grew up, my parents split up when I was probably 9 years old, and so was raised by my mom. So it was a challenge, like your working mom being home alone and having to, kind of find your way and get to sports practices and, to live life as best you can in those scenarios.
Wow, wow, amazing. So, what was this earlier job you did before you get go to school and get into physical therapy? Your
Yeah, my first job was working at a pizza place. And, it one taught me a ton of responsibility, because I had to drive 20 minutes to get there, be on time, how to serve a customer, how to, make the experience just be a great experience. Even though it's just a pizza place, you try to make the best pizza you can and the best experience that you can. So it was a valuable. It also too worked with some folks, some of my teammates who were probably I guess between 6 and 10 years older than me. So it was, the environment of working with people who have had more experience in life than you. So that was always kind of a fun learning experience as well.
wow, that was really amazing. While working there, did it ever occur to you that you were going to become an entrepreneur, or you just love the environment and you didn't?
I kind of found myself falling into it in a way. I can remember like going all the way back to I think when I was 12. I knew that I wanted to be a doctor, first of all, and I wanted to just help people and do it in a very different way.
Hmm.
And so when I got to college, I was playing football, American football, at the same time. And I just realized that, you know what, I wasn't really happy with the way that American medicine was going. It just wasn't it didn't allow you to be creative. And so maybe that was a little bit of the entrepreneur in me starting to kind of
Yeah.
speak up. And during football, I got injured. So I actually got the exposure to physical therapy. And I thought, wow, this is just a great way to help people recover from injuries. You get to work with them for a longer period of time. You really get to know them. So after graduating, I went to school, and in my first job, real serious job after school, after a few years, my boss said, I kind of want to give up my practice, and I'm wondering if you want to partner in and buy it out. And so that was my first experience into true entrepreneurship.
Wow, wow, amazing. And you run your two clinic for nearly 3 decades. What did those years teach you about resilience?
But resilience,
Yeah,
resilience is every day, right? It's getting knocked down and getting right back up. You know, I there's a real strength in that. If we get knocked down 6 times, get up seven. You get knocked down 10, you get up 11, and you learn strength. If you can reflect back on when you get knocked down, there's tons of life lessons in there. Um, it's it's where we learn too from where our strengths are. Where can we lean on that, on our internal strengths when we're resilient. Now, as I'm older, one of the things I'm really looking at is robustness versus resilience, which is that ability to kind of put in, behaviors and patterns to try to minimize those things from happening again.
yeah,
And I think you learn that from entrepreneurship,
yeah,
right? You can either keep putting out the same fire over and over again, or you can learn how to not set it again.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, what was the toughest challenge you faced while you were running your business, and how were you able to get
Uh,
through it?
I mean, I would have to say COVID.
Ooh.
Running a practice, and I think at that time I had 32 employees, and I'm from California, and so the rules were changing literally every single day. You have to wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask. You do have to wear a mask. You have to wash your hands. You don't, there was so much change. And that was one of the hardest experience, but yet one of the best learning experiences. I think what it really brought out in me is what's super important is which is just taking care of people.
Mm.
You know, we stayed open, we never closed. There were some patients who kind of needed us, not so much in the way of
Yeah.
from their injury, but they just needed that community. And I think in the toughest times, that's when we figure out where we show up the best and what's most important to us.
Wow. Amazing, amazing. So when did you realize it was time to sell your business, and what was the process like?
I have to say it was COVID again because it was, 20 some odd years of running the
Yeah.
business. And, I had also been through the 2008 housing crisis where people really got upset. But COVID really just kind of took a little bit of the fire out of me in terms of just the day-to-day operations. It was just getting harder and
I know.
harder with regulations and healthcare. And I think people changed during that time too. So you kind of had to really shift. The workforce definitely changed where it was tougher to keep people around. Um, so, I think I realized that, if the opportunity came up, that would be, to sell the practice would be one of the best things because I started coaching other healthcare owners at the same time I was running my
Mm.
practice back in 2016. And I thought, wow, this is really, really neat. So, just to kind of elaborate a little bit on my story, I mentioned that I just want to help people, right? So, as a physical therapist in our practice, I could help 14 patients a day with their injuries. But as an owner, I can help the 5 or 7 therapists that I have help their 14.
Mhm.
So it becomes an
Yeah,
exponential reach, right?
that's true.
And so what really drew me to what I'm doing now is again that exponential reach. Because if I can help the owner who then has 2, 4, 5, 10 of their employees and they can help their people make a better life, then I'm reaching more and more people.
Wow, wow, amazing. Such a lovely way of looking at it. Being that you could actually help on your own, just help just for 10. And if each of those specialists could actually handle 14 on their own end, handling 5 of them altogether is as though you're handling 70 altogether in multiplication by 14. That is really amazing of looking at the
Exactly.
numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And I think that's something about
yeah,
entrepreneurs, right? There is that little bit of like the scale of the ability to help someone.
yeah,
Whatever they create or whatever they design or whatever business they start, they get to help that many people. So it is that little bit of an exponential reach where that becomes a little bit of the motivator for us.
yeah, yeah, so true. Yeah, thank you. So, what do you think separate business that survive from those that thrive and scale?
Mm, great question. Um, I think probably one of the biggest things is mindset.
Mm,
I'm fascinated about mindset. If someone has a real positive mindset, they'll take ownership of where they are with
mm,
their successes and their losses or their frustrations. If they don't, you often find them pointing their fingers. And oh, well, this person didn't help me, or the industry changed, or they start putting blame out there. And it starts once you start going down that negative path, it
mm,
it it really you see that almost the collapse begin of a business. If you throw your hands up and say, well, I can't do
yeah,
that, I can't control that, you're heading down a path where everything's going to get out of control
wow,
versus what can I do today, what can I own, and that leads to that growth mindset, going from that ownership mindset to the growth mindset. And once you finally realize that you can grow, you start getting strategic. You start thinking, where can I grow?
wow. It,
And then from there, you can actually start to help other people, that help your team and really put the impact out there.
Wow.
So I think that that's what you can tell is like the way that people talk, the way that they, they might point their fingers at someone and say, well, that person's not they're not showing up for work. Well, are you showing up? Is kind of the first question I ask.
Wow, amazing. It's the fact that the way you view entrepreneurship from this end is taking ownership and despite the problem that comes every now and then, showing up with the fact that what can we do differently to actually bring the needed solution to this particular problem. And I think it's really, really key because I think there was a particular definition of problem that struck me, and it was saying that problem are opportunity in work clothes. So when we see that particular as from that particular perspective, we are seeing the difference we can actually do every now and then to bring a different result. So for the mindset for you, were you do you always have this positive mindset, or how do you come to learn it?
I will not admit that I'm perfect. I definitely will have my moments when I
Yeah,
have the negative mindsets. And I think that's the beauty of our mind is that it can change. It's malleable. It's, depending on how we surround ourselves,
yeah,
what we think and, how we approach other people, that it's, like what's the saying? Like we're the average of the five or six people that we have around us. So if we have positive people around us, we will be positive.
yeah.
If we have negative people around us, we'll be negative. But to answer your question is no, I think we all have that ability to be negative and we all have that ability to be positive. Some are more positive most of the time than others. But we can always have that negative, that's sort of that mind, and social media will play into that. Oh, I don't have this. And so that comparison culture can be tough,
Wow.
but our minds are strong. Our minds are strong.
Wow, thank you so much. I think it's the fact that just hearing your story just speaks volumes to the fact that it can be learned owing to what we actually more like feed ourselves every now and then with, and it really speaks volume. And um what is usually the biggest barrier that is hindering entrepreneurs from actually more like uh doing the business, hindering that is holding most entrepreneur back? What is the biggest barrier apart from mindset?
I mean, you could say like resources. Do they have the money to start? Do they have an idea? Because that's really where entrepreneurs start is, what was the definition? An entrepreneur is about taking a resource from one level of productivity to another. So can you look at something and say, and I love what you said earlier about like, is it a problem or is it an opportunity? Because a lot of times when you run into obstacles, those obstacles might actually be the natural resources for your own growth if we choose to look
Yeah,
at it that way, right?
yeah.
I think the other thing too, when we talk, we can, and again, we can bring kind of mindset back into this with with that topic of capital, like money. If money is a scarce thing for you in your mindset, it's
Mm.
always going to be hard to find.
Wow. Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
money is out there. We just have to go find it.
Yeah.
We just have to like know, and you know what? We have to ask for it, right? And deliver a value in exchange
Yeah.
for it. Then money just flows.
Wow. It mindset really cut across every aspect of entrepreneurship, really.
It it really does
Yeah.
because again, if you look at the world like it's full of problems, you don't have a whole lot of avenues to go
Yeah.
to. And they now affect you versus, hey, that problem, what can we do with that? There's a way to shift it, right? And a way to shift the question, not like I can't do anything to what can I do?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So you talk about entrepreneurship getting stuck in the weed. What does it look like in real life?
When they're stuck in the
Yeah.
weeds. Yeah. I think it's like who you surround yourself with. If an entrepreneur is around negative people, their mindset and their actions will mimic scarcity. They will mimic um, restriction, limitation. So you get stuck in the weeds, and you start when you kind of get these negative mindsets. Entrepreneurs love looking ahead. They love
Yeah.
looking at what's next. Where can we go with this next? When you're stuck in the day to day, and you're not seeing what's happening around
Yeah.
you and what the possibilities are. So again, sometimes it's just a matter of like lifting your head up out of the water just a little bit to see, where am I? You
Mhm.
may feel like you're underwater, but if you can get up to, here
Yeah.
where just your eyes are, it's a whole different perspective.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you for that. So um as a coach, how do you help leaders shift from survival mode to growth mode?
What I tend to explore with them is, where did that belief come from? What is that limiting belief or the negative belief? Can we explore where it came from? Most of the time, it's probably something you picked up from your
Yeah.
parents or from, other elders around you. If your parents may not have grown up with much, they're going to maybe not intentionally, they're going to pass
Yeah.
those beliefs down.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of looking at it and saying, okay, is that really true in this moment? What's around you? What's abundant? What can you do? And so it's kind of resetting their presence in their base of where and how they're looking at things, and trying to, it's almost like, I've got glasses
Yeah.
on. So if I put on a different prescription, I might be able to see clearer. So with that negative mindset, can we put on a
Mm.
different pair of glasses?
Wow. 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 I think it's the fact that you use more like a pair of glasses to actually compare mindset, and uh because it now depends on how we see life, and if the mindset, the glass is not that uh being the specified one, we'll end up seeing a whole lot of things that ought not to be seen, and seeing difficulties, seeing problems, seeing complaints, seeing a
Hmm.
whole lot of things that actually might weigh us down, compared to what you do is basically to actually more like refuse the glass again, so that they can see clearer and actually more like a better perspective. Because for me, I think you just sharing this particular experience, it just dawned on me that at one point I find it difficult for me selling myself out there, because then I run industrial cleaning, and at one point I was like, why am I not getting clients? And I was like, "Ah, if I am good, do I need to sell myself?" And it was until I read Seth Godin's book, and it was making reference of the fact that see marketing most times as reaching out, telling people about the good things you have for them, not just from the perspective of the fact that you are trying to put yourself on people's face, but for the fact that you don't want them to fall victim of in the bad hand who doesn't know how to do the job, but they are just loud. So your what to do is just more like show up and direct them owing to you have, yes, you have the better product, you have the better service. So don't allow them to lose out from benefiting from you showing up and doing their work rightly. And it just dawned on me that whoo,
Yeah.
it it was just the fact that I was not seeing right before. That was what was actually limiting how I actually view things and do things.
Yeah, I mean, again, like if you put on somebody else's glasses and or you don't need glasses, you put somebody
Yeah,
on, the world's distorted.
yeah,
Or, like when all of a sudden you're reading a book and it's like the words are fuzzy. It's like there's something there.
yeah.
So let's try something different. And let's try, it's not like, okay, let me try harder to read this 'cause, like my eyes will get better. No, let's just try a different view,
So true.
a different light, or different something that can often open up the entrepreneur to growth.
Yeah, wow. Thank you, Steve. So, what role does team empowerment play in scaling a business?
Team empowerment. I think there's a couple things really important, which, the second piece that I always work with clients on is vision.
Hmm.
If a leader doesn't share the vision, like I use this example as, here I'm in the US. Let's say I want to take a trip.
Yeah,
And I say, I'm in California, and I say, I want to go to the East Coast. Well, there's a lot of directions that I could go. I could go to Maine, I can go to Florida, I can go to Washington, D.C. If I don't know exactly where I'm going, I'll come to the first exit or off ramp or on ramp on the highway, and I won't know which way I'm going. And most of the time, you tend to spin around in circles. So part of it is knowing the direction, knowing the vision, knowing the plan is one of the things that starts to really bring leaders together
Yeah.
and team people together. And I think also too, when companies are growing really fast, when that vision doesn't get passed down,
Mm,
it creates a disconnect in the employee maybe who hasn't heard the vision or doesn't know where the vision is. They don't know how they're helping. They
mm,
don't know what part they're playing in this. So I think that there is a little bit of that, the vision and the plan alignment. There's definitely like culture that makes is a big important part of it, which is also like core values. Like how are we going to behave? How are we going to show up? What are the rules that we're going to operate by? Those things, I think, create the foundation from which you're going to build on the house,
mm.
right? If you have a weak foundation, you don't have your vision or your plan defined, and you don't have values defined, you kind of have a shaky house that you're building on.
Wow, this is really, really profound. I think it just speaks volumes to the fact that being a leader or being more like or starting out a business, the vision has to be, yeah, to a certain extent has to be clear. You have to know where you're going, what the mission is, so that at the end of the day, when you onboard them, uh, you can actually get to market them what the vision is all about, to the extent that they own the vision, not just more like showing up daily without knowing what difference they are making in the world. And it's the fact that you make reference to,
Yeah.
yeah, they should own the story, they should own the vision. With that particular way, they could actually run with it and, yeah, stand as an ambassador of what the company represents, not just an employee who is waiting for the next month paycheck here and there.
Yeah. One of the things that I love working with clients on is change and transition.
Yeah.
Change, if you think about it, is just a moment in time. It's a decision. Like, we're going to go this direction, right? That's the
Yeah.
change. Where people are uncomfortable is the transition afterwards. And, you know, um, there's a great leader, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, who really talked about this transition period. And one of the biggest things you need to do is share the purpose. Why are we going this
Mm.
direction? And so if there's four P's: purpose, picture, part, plan. So the team has to know why we're going in this direction. What's it going to mean? What are we helping? So if they're really behind the purpose, it gets easier to craft the picture of the future. Hey, this is what it's going to look like when we can get this product out there. This is how it's going to change people's lives. This is how many units we're going to sell, or whatever it is. It gets them aligned into, like, going back to my trip
Yeah.
is, hey, we're going to go to Washington, D.C. and go see the Capitol. We're going to see the White House, all these different things. So now people can get excited about it. And then sharing the plan with them on how we're going to get there is super important. And I think, again, building your teams together is the last part, which is everybody has to know their part in the process. You know, the person who maybe is on the production line of a company may not relate what he or she does to the overall goal of the company. But if you can tie those together, then that worker is so much more motivated
Yes.
to the end result of how it benefits people.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. Thanks very much for releasing these blueprints, purpose, plan, picture, and parts. It's really amazing looking
Mhm.
at it from that particular end. So you have navigated recession and crisis. What advice will you give leaders facing uncertainty today?
Uncertainty. I think uncertainty is scary, right?
Yeah.
Because we
We
don't
don't know.
know, right? So what I will often like encourage people is to say, okay, so what do you know? Let's start with what's real, what's tangible. Where are you? How much money are you making? What are you producing? Let's figure out what's known and real. So then so then we can start to kind of get around something stable. If we keep talking about, well, I don't know, that's like taking a trip without a vision. So going back to the trip in terms of uncertainty is okay, well, we know we're going to drive, or we know we're going to fly, we know we're going to take this form of transportation, we know we're going to stay at this point, we're going to stay in this hotel. Create as much of the known as you possibly can of what is available to you. No one, at least I've never met anybody, can tell the future.
So,
So there's always uncertainty in the future. But if we know our mindset is straight, we know our vision is clear, we know our plan is roughly, known and predictable. We can't always predict everything. Like, if there's a tornado or a hurricane or something, we can't, then we can make changes to that. But if you don't have a plan, there's a great saying, fail to plan, or what is it? Fail if you fail to plan, plan to
yeah.
fail.
Yeah, so true. And I think when you just make reference of that, getting a plan, even if uh, we are uncertain how life turns out to be most times, owing to the fact that we have not lived that part, we have not lived that age, we are just uncovering it every now and then. It just doesn't mean that most times employees that get to stay with the whole lot of leaders during the period of crisis, during the period of uncertainty, is the fact that there was clear communication of what the plan is. Even if the leader does not know where the next check is going to come into being and everything. And even sometimes even the employees does not even know whether he will get paid that particular month. It was the fact that there was open communication of where they were, where they intend to go, and what is the
Yeah.
blueprint of getting there. Because most times they even end up more energized than those who have it figured out, but
Hmm.
they are not well
Yeah.
communicated, which simply means communication is very, very key when it comes to the uncertainty and carrying everybody along. They know which part they fit, and they know the difference they could actually make if they were able to kind of put in the work. And this is really amazing.
And what you're saying, I mean, it just brings me back to that time in COVID, right? COVID was a time of unknown,
Yeah,
uncertainty. We didn't know in the early phases we didn't have a vaccine. We didn't have anything for it. We didn't know how it spread. We didn't understand anything. But the one thing I always tried to do was keep in communication with my team and my people. Hey, this is what we know right now. This is where we're going to go. This is how we're going to approach it. It may change,
yeah,
but this is at least what we know right now.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. So many entrepreneurs struggle
Hmm.
with letting go of control. How do you learn to trust others?
Oh, that's a great question. That is probably one of, you talk about being in the weeds. That's probably one of and I go back to, again, that's a mindset, right?
Yeah,
They're failing to let things go comes down to a couple things. One is maybe a story that I'm the only one who can do that, or I'm the best one who can do that. And there might be some truth to that, but you might be good at it, but there might be somebody who's better. You never know. And if we can find those people who are better, fantastic. Um, I think the other thing is, one, checking in to make sure it's not a story that you're telling yourself in your head.
yeah,
So looking at yourself and saying, hey, what am I best at? What are you best at? And okay, I'm not that good at that, but you're really good. Okay, here, why don't you do this? The other big piece is trust. When trust is missing, it's incredibly hard to delegate because then you turn into a micromanager.
wow, wow. I think that is very, very key. And yeah, because when it comes to being a leader, delegating sometimes can be a very big issue when it comes to trusting people and everything. Because especially when you're starting out, there is this mindset when you start out that yes, I'm the only one who can do this, I'm the only one who can do that. And as the organization keep growing, you discover that you can't be everywhere and you can't handle everything. Because
Exactly.
I had that issue when back when I was in school, when I was in university, and I was part of the fellowship leadership, and I find it very, very difficult to trust someone and leave them to their sense of judgment to make do of that particular thing. And every time I overwork myself every now and then. And here I was seeing others do more difficult job, but do it seamlessly without having to actually break down. And that's how actually more
Yeah.
like start looking forward to what mindset have I actually put on that made me not to trust people. And over time, it
Yeah.
has actually really get better.
There's a fun exercise I love to do with owners
Okay.
is one, I asked them a question. I said, how much are you worth per hour?
Hmm.
And how well do how they're like, I don't know, right? So but I'll say, okay, take your annual revenue and then divide that by 40 hours in a week.
Hmm.
Or the equivalent, which is 2080
Hmm.
hours in a 40-hour work week. So they come up with a number. And so this is a fun exercise to take them through. So let's say they come up with their value, because as the owner, they're responsible for the whole company, right? So you can take the revenue and divide that by that number of hours. So let's say they figure out their cost per hour is $500 per hour. So then we take them through an exercise to look at every single thing that they're doing, and to say, all right, would you pay someone $500 an hour to make copies, or to fill the copy machine, or to do that one job? And it might be, no, that's like a $20 an hour person. Or, you can reframe the position to say, what is
Hmm.
the value of that task? Okay, now are you going to pay someone that your rate to do
Yeah.
that job?
Wow, amazing. I think it's really a lovely way of looking at it because I remember when I just finished from uni, I was basically accepting every jobs. And until I realized at one point that, oh, I think I need to step back this point. Because then I have some colleagues who have job, they will just want to call me along to follow them execute it. So at one point I was not taking those offers. I say I'd rather do that with my customer, being that I'm creating a relationship, than to go there and collect that little stuff for an hour. I was like, nah. Uh, so it really changed a whole lot of perspective, and I think the fact that you just make reference of the game, and I think every entrepreneurs need to sit down and look at this, because looking at this forced you to think of which better way can I actually put in place to make more, while entrusting
Mhm,
more to others. And it's really a
mhm.
lovely way of looking at it. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then the next exercise you can do with them is you have them add up the time that they're spending on those lower
Yeah.
cost tasks, right? So let's say that's 8 hours in a week. You can now say, all right, what value do you bring? What will you do with those eight
Mm.
hours if you had that time back?
Wow.
So if 8 hours now times 500 is, what's that, 4,000 or $40,000 or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah.
you start to see the value of, why am I doing that when I should be doing more of this?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. This is a lovely way of looking at it. Thank you. So on the flip side, what positive mindset for a long-term success?
I think ownership is, again,
Hmm.
if you have that ability to just own your role, own your responsibilities, own the results. Now, when anything comes up, you can now assess and say, okay, what did I do well? What can I do better?
Hmm. Wow.
I think that has to be the foundation there. I think if you don't, I, I always, when I have clients who start like pointing fingers, like, oh, so and so didn't do that. I always say, well, when you point your finger, there's actually three
Yeah.
pointing back at you. So when you point your finger at them, what are you responsible for?
Hmm.
And it kind of stops them in their tracks to think like, oh yeah, I guess I didn't teach them that, or we didn't do this. So I think it really has to start there. You, as an entrepreneur, you really have to own your mindset, own your mind, own your results, and things will begin to grow from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Wow.
If you can always come back to what you own and what is yours, and to understand what is yours and maybe what is somebody else's, then you don't, that's when you get away from that like, I have to do everything, right?
Yeah.
If you think you own everything, well, you're gonna run out of energy at
Yeah.
some point.
So true. And I think this.
So what
Yeah.
truly do we own? That's the big thing.
Wow. Taking ownership. Ownership. I think you just make reference of this point. It just dawned on me because I think I've over the course of interview, I've interviewed some veterans who were more like military men from marine to soldier to various other fields before they actually dive into businesses. And when they dive into businesses, their perspective and the way they do business is way, 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 way different from how other persons do different, owing to the energy they put in, the sense of responsibility and everything. Because at one point I was wondering, why do more like those veterans succeed when it comes to war and every other particular stuff? It's the fact that when they are in war, a whole lot is delegated to them. Their life is at stake, and and they might be of a younger age, but the task that is being given,
Mhm.
you have to own that task for you to be able to bring outstanding results. Yeah. So
Yeah.
owing to those
Yeah.
regiments, they came out with this focus of ownership that most times any business they own, it's usually either they make it successful or they quit. Yeah, really, because that sense of energy
Hmm.
of more like doing businesses, doing all what you do as though life depends on it, with this ultimate
Yeah.
more like a sense of urgency of I own this thing. If this thing fails, I fail. So
Hmm. Yeah.
it's really a lovely way of
Yeah.
looking at it, other than from the perspective of, well, if it doesn't work, there's always plan B.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's another concept that we can add to this in this thinking is like there's a scale, there's responsibility and there's accountability.
Hmm.
You know, responsibility is kind of you're owning a task and the result that comes from the task. Accountability, you own the overall outcome or result, right? And I think with entrepreneurs or just even people in business, the higher up you get, the more you get into accountability
Yeah.
because you're now responsible for the end result versus maybe somebody like, you use like the military is like a private or, a foot soldier has a lot of
Yeah.
responsibility to do the task. The lieutenant colonel
Yeah.
general has a lot of accountability
Adaptability.
for the battle and the war,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's really important to understand that terms.
Yeah. So true. So true. Thank you for bringing clarity into that particular
Hmm.
end. So, how did you balance personal side of life while leading and scaling your business?
I'll say I'm not perfect. I did not do a great job. And I think, if I reflect back on that, I think I went so overboard on the ownership mentality that I felt I was responsible for everything.
Mm.
And when that happens, you can't let go. And when, again, you can start to trust your team to be able to lead people, then you can start to begin to let go. And I kind of laugh when you ask that question because, as I was running my business and also doing coaching, I had 20 coaching clients and I was
Oh.
running a business with 30 people in
Oh.
it.
Wow.
And when you go back and you look at it, said, well, I didn't do either very well, right? So if you figure you have 100% of energy to spread around during a day, and if you're doing 10 things, you're doing about 10% energy in each one of those things. So kind of goes back to your question before about delegating is really
Yeah.
figuring out where you want to spend your energy, where you show up best in your energy. So I think what I like to do also too is with that exercise of what are you doing now and have people look at that and say, what do you really love to do? If we can put your energy in what you love to do and minimize the things you don't like to do, then it helps to create that work-life integration. I think the whole concept of work-life balance is a false
Mm.
statement.
Yeah, so true. And I think as you just make reference of this, your last statement, it just speak volume to the fact that yeah, most times, because I think I've view of this particular idea when I was talking to my friend that the idea of time management sometimes it's not yet well defined. Let's say, imagine if you don't have much in your plate, can you say you're managing your time very well? It's only if you have a whole lot of
Yeah.
demanding tasks and owing to time is finite, being that we just have 24 hours in a day. That will actually more like force you to say, okay, at least I'm going to sleep within this particular hour. What is left? How
Uh-huh.
can I make more from this particular So it's you more like we make reference of you doing more, and owing to when you are doing more, looking back, you're not making adjustments of, okay, what do I love doing from this? What should I delegate?
Mhm.
And what would be better? Rather than make reference of work-life balance, and at the end of the day, you leave a whole lot of things out of the table, and you need to come to the point of the limits where you can make reference of uh what can we do differently owing to this constant demand showing up compared to you didn't even get there, which most times most entrepreneurs didn't get kind of they just run with the idea of work-life balance, and at the end of the day, not making most of what they could do differently.
Yeah. The term work-life balance always gets me because if you think about balance, balance means it's static and even.
Yeah.
Work and life are not
Yeah.
even. We think about it, we have 8 hours of sleep, maybe we have 8 hours of personal time and 8 hours of work and in a typical day. So, but the problem is, I think with entrepreneurs is they're so focused on their business that the way they approach time is by work first, and then whatever's left over,
Yeah.
I'll sleep, I'll see my family, I'll do what I can, right? So it's more of, I think, like, we only have 24 hours in the day. So start with yourself, okay? How much, how long do you want to sleep? Oh, 7 hours. Okay, good. So then we come up with, all right, how many more hours do you want to work, to exercise, to be with your family, whatever. So you start with yourself first, and then whatever's left over that becomes your work time.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. I think looking at it in that very way just give the balance of or making most of what you actually have at hand. So
Yeah.
how do you know if coaching is the right step for an entrepreneur?
I have a favorite phrase that says, when a student is ready, a teacher appears.
Mm,
Right. So a client to me has to, one, have a growth mindset first. If they have that scarcity mindset or that fixed mindset, they can be very tough to work with because, it's a scarcity of money, it's a scarcity of time issue. I can't put all the things into play. So you get into that. So a growth-minded person and someone who's very decisive makes a great client. Now, how does someone know? Is when you sit there and you're going, I don't know what to do. That's a great time to raise your hand
mm,
and say, I need help. Or we're when sort of that confusion and that uncertainty comes up, having someone from the outside of where you are to look in, because when you're in the middle of it, you can't necessarily see what the chaos
yeah,
is. But someone on the outside can easily say, oh, well, there's this. So, there's a real vulnerability to asking for help, but that's often what leads to some of the most successful entrepreneurs is vulnerability.
so true.
That to say, I don't know, is a powerful thing versus faking it and saying, oh, yeah, I know what to do, and you don't. And that'll start to break up the team culture, the leadership culture, the team dynamics when your people can't trust you that you're honest. How how can you trust yourself? Again, you own
Yeah.
yourself, right? If people can't trust you, you have to look at ourselves and can I even trust myself to hold my boundaries, to honor my own schedule? So I think that that's an important thing is just if you find yourself going, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, I wish I could do more,
Mm,
just raise your hand and someone will be there to help.
wow, this is
So
amazing.
when the student is ready, the student raises the hand, I need help, right?
Yeah, teacher will show up.
And you get it.
Yeah, thank you. So what is one success story from your coaching work that inspired you?
Early on, yeah, this is early on. I was working with a physical therapist who owned her practice, and when we met, she was, I think, 3 months behind on doing her notes. And I'm not sure if you know, like when you do your notes on a patient visit, that's how you get paid because you actually put it in the documentation system, and then generates a bill. So she was 3 months behind on her ability to even bill to get paid. So she had one clinic with a couple staff. So we worked together for probably 3 years, and and then we took a break because she had was opening up her third clinic. She had hired someone to be her CEO to run the clinics, and when we were working together, she was in Hawaii. When I last heard from her, she was in Arkansas with her family, and yet she still had her business.
Wow.
So part of with her, it was learning, you know, all the things we talked about is, you know what, I need help. I need someone to be able to do this with me. I need to know when is, what requires my help or my work, and when can I pass this on to somebody else? And it was trust to be able to step back further and further. The more she could step back, the more she began to trust,
Mm.
and the more money she began to make.
Wow. Amazing.
So that was a fun story. That's one of my most fun experience as a coach.
Wow. That's really amazing. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you think about your journey from therapist to coach, what legacy do you hope to leave behind?
As a therapist, I always wanted people to say, you know what, I got help. I
Mm.
got I got what I needed from him. As an owner, it shifted slightly to be, his people were so good they helped me. And now as a coach, I hope that my legacy is that I provided some nugget that helped change someone's thinking, and it ended up changing someone's
Mm.
outcome. And they can say, wow, that was a great experience.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, thank you, Steve. It's really been an
Absolutely.
amazing moment having these conversations with you. So, how can my audience learn more from you, connect with you, and do business with you?
So I have on my website, which is www.stevethompsoncoaching.com. And you can email me at steve@stevethompsoncoaching.com. So you can Google and get to our website. I always, when I begin to engage with a client, I always do a free sample session. I want people to know what it's like.
Wow.
I want, because coaching is about a
Yeah.
relationship, right? It's not a transaction, it's about transformation. And so you have to, again, trust. So I may not be the right coach for everybody, but we won't know that until we get on a phone call or we get on a Zoom call or whatever to kind of help understand what's going on to see, is this the right thing for you?
Wow. Wow. Amazing. So, who is the ID client that you want to reach out to you when it comes to business?
I love this question. I think it's, someone who is either growing so fast that they don't know what to do, and that it feels like the wheels are coming off because they're so successful. They just keep adding people. I love working with them. I love working with people who are just stuck and have so much potential but just don't know what to do. So kind of get going from that struggling person to the successful person. Their struggle could be that they're stuck in a mindset. Their struggle could be they're growing so fast they don't know what to do. And they have a growth mindset. They're decisive in people moves, and they have a bigger vision.
Wow.
And it may not be clear, but it'll be something. Like, they'll have like, I want something more. That wanting something more is like the carrot that pulls them forward.
Wow. Amazing. Thanks so much for this. And if you were to
Yeah.
leave my audience with a final word, what would it be?
Ah, first of all, listen more to your podcasts. These are great. These are great conversations. I
Thank
love
you.
this. Um, I would say, again, as a coach, is I know it's vulnerable to raise your hand to ask for
Mm.
help, but it's probably the best thing that you can do. You know, you think about the days you're back in school and the times that you raised your hand to ask your professor or your teacher a question. How much more did you learn than not?
Mm. Wow.
So whether it's a mentor, a boss, a supervisor, a coach, whatever it is, raise your hand and get some help. We all need it. It's the hardest thing to do, but it's the best thing that we can do.
Yeah.
Because running a business as an entrepreneur is a lonely place. You don't really have many people you can talk to. So a coach can fill that role. It can be that other pair of eyes and that other thought. And it can be someone who challenges you,
Yeah, totally.
that can hear the same stories going over and over, and you can challenge to break those stories and help guide you through that.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, Steve, thank you for sharing your stories and insights. For those listening, if you are ready to shift your mindsets, empower your team, and grow your business with clarity, visit stevethompsoncoaching.com. The link is going to be on the show. The next time, keep building, keep learning with grit and resilience. We'll see you in the next show. Once again, it's
Great.
really a pleasure having you on the show.